Okay, so buckle up, everybody, because today we are diving headfirst into some seriously murky water.
Yeah, this one's going to be good.
You know how former President Trump recently called January 6th the Day of Love?
Oh, yeah, that's been everywhere.
Well, we're going way beyond the sound bites today, folks.
Deep dive time.
Exactly. We've got 3 articles, each one with a totally different take on this whole thing.
Lay it on us.
We're going to break down what those words really mean, what's the strategy behind them, and what this could signal for the 2024 election.
Yeah, because let me tell you, this isn't just some offhand comment.
Not even close.
This is calculated, and it could have some massive implications.
Okay, so first, let's set the scene, all right?
Hit me.
One of the articles we're looking at is from CBS News, and it describes this Univision town hall.
Okay.
Trump is face-to-face with a voter, someone who used to vote Republican, but is, well, really disturbed by January 6th.
Makes sense, right?
Totally. This voter is worried about the attack, about Trump's actions that day, the fact that even his own VP is distancing himself. It's a lot.
Heavy stuff. So how'd that go over?
Well, instead of really addressing those concerns head on, you know what's fascinating?
What's that?
The way Trump chooses to respond.
Yeah, I'm intrigued.
He completely sidesteps the issue of his delayed response on January 6th and just dives right into this narrative that downplays the violence of that day.
Classic deflection.
It's like he's trying to rewrite history right there on live TV.
Exactly. And it goes even further than that. He actually claims no guns were present among his supporters.
Which we know is just plain false.
100%. And this is where the legal definition of possession gets really interesting.
Oh, how so?
So even if those rioters didn't personally carry firearms into the Capitol, the Justice Department has successfully argued that those who knew others had weapons or used those weapons to threaten or assault.
They can still be charged with firearm offenses.
You got it.
So it's not just about having guns, it's about using them to intimidate and use force, which definitely happened that day.
Right. And it's all in the language Trump uses. Incredibly deliberate. The Bulwark article really digs into this.
What'd they find?
He keeps using we when he talks about the rioters.
Interesting.
Like, there were no guns down there, we didn't have guns. He's making a clear distinction between them, the rioters, and law enforcement, who he calls the others.
Wow. That sends chills down my spine. It's like he's intentionally blurring the lines, creating this us versus them narrative.
Exactly. And you know what? This isn't even the first time he's used this kind of language.
You're right. Think back to that last presidential debate.
But what's striking here is how much more blatant it is. This time, he is straight up aligning himself with the insurrectionists.
Which is a huge shift from how he reacted to January 6th initially.
Oh, absolutely. Remember, at first, he eventually called for peace. Eventually.
Right, like way later.
And his team, they tried to paint that attack as some isolated incident.
Yeah, like it was just a fringe group.
Trying to minimize his role, the severity of it all.
Trying to sweep it under the rug.
Exactly. But now he's not just embracing the rioters. He's writing them into his narrative.
They became them the heroes of his story. So the question is why? Why the change of tune?
Is he just trying to fire up his base? Or is there something else going on here? Something more calculated, maybe even a little more cynical?
It's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
It really is. And this is where things get really interesting.
Yeah.
Because I think it's a strategy, but with multiple layers.
Okay, you've got my attention. Let's peel back those layers.
Okay, so imagine this for a second.
Okay.
Trump, he's a branding genius.
That's one way to put it.
He's built his whole career on this image of success, on being a winner.
Right.
So for him to admit any kind of fault in what happened on January 6th, even just acknowledging the facts.
That totally shatters that image.
Exactly. It goes against his brand.
So is he trying to just like rewrite the whole narrative of that day? Or is this about tapping into how his base feels?
I think it's both, honestly.
Because it really feels like he's creating this alternate reality where January 6th wasn't a violent attack, but, I don't know, some act of heroism.
You're exactly right. When he calls it a day of love, he's trying to own that narrative.
Mm-hmm.
Redefine it how he wants.
On his terms.
Exactly. And for some of his base, the ones who are convinced the election was stolen.
Right.
This reframing, it makes sense to them.
It justifies their anger, their distrust.
100%. And what's scary is, it seems to be working.
Yeah, the Washington Post article brings up Senator J.D. Vance, who's kind of a rising star in the Republican Party now.
Right, what about him?
He's echoing Trump's claims about election fraud.
Even though there's literally zero evidence.
None whatsoever.
And that's the thing. That's how this stuff spreads.
It's like a virus.
It's not just Trump anymore. you have these other big names in the Republican Party backing him up, amplifying his message.
Giving it credibility.
Exactly.
Right.
And that normalizes it, makes it seem legitimate, especially to his diehard supporters.
So you end up with this echo chamber where facts don't matter and disagreeing
Makes you the enemy.
Yeah.
And that's the really dangerous part.
It undermines our entire democracy.
It's not just about one election. It makes people question free and fair elections, the peaceful transfer of power, the core of our system.
Because if you really believe the system is rigged,
You'll do whatever it takes to fight back. But look, we have to remember, not all Republicans are buying into this.
that's true. The Washington Post article does mention this poll.
Right, what'd it say?
A lot of Americans, and a surprising number of Republicans, they still see January 6th as a huge threat.
A threat to democracy itself.
Exactly.
And you know what else? That same poll, less than half of Republicans agreed with how Trump wants those rioters punished.
Really?
Yeah, which tells me there's some real tension within the Republican Party.
A rift.
Maybe. It's like they need Trump's base to win elections, but they know this rhetoric.
Alienates everyone else.
It's a tough spot to be in. It makes you wonder, what direction will the Republican Party go in?
Will they embrace his narrative or try a different approach? It seems risky either way.
It is. It's like he's walking a tightrope.
Because on one hand, this rhetoric, this day of love stuff, it fires up his base.
No doubt. But on the other hand,
It pushes away those moderate voters,
the ones who actually decide elections.
especially in those swing states. So where does that leave us? What does this mean for 2024?
Well, that's what's so fascinating about all this. It's like he's using this campaign as a testing ground.
Seeing how far he can push things.
Exactly. And this is where that CBS article, it highlights this huge difference between what Trump's saying and what Vice President Harris is saying about January 6th.
And it shows just how divided the two parties really are.
Totally. It'll be a huge issue in the election. You've got Harris framing January 6th as this attack on American democracy.
Versus Trump calling it a day of love.
It's a battle of narratives, and it's about so much more than just one event.
It's about how we as a country choose to remember our past.
And how that shapes our future.
It makes you wonder, is this whole day of love thing actually going to work for Trump? Or could it backfire?
That's the million-dollar question, right?
Yeah.
And it's a little scary to even think about. I mean, this kind of defiant language.
It really gets his base going.
Oh, absolutely. It feeds into that whole siege mentality. You know, the idea that they're the victims, that their values are under attack.
It's powerful stuff.
It really is.
Yeah.
Especially in a close election.
But could it turn off those moderate voters? Because aren't they the ones who usually decide?
100%.
Yeah.
Especially in those swing states.
Right.
And that's the gamble he's taking. He might fire up his base, but...
At what cost?
Exactly. Because by pushing this alternate version of January 6th,
He pushes away moderate Republicans, independents, anyone who's still bothered by what happened.
it's like he's playing with fire, trying to control something that can easily explode.
And it's not just about Trump, is it?
Not even close. His words have a ripple effect.
It's like he's legitimizing extremist views.
Totally. Suddenly it's okay to question our elections, the foundation of our democracy. That's a dangerous road to go down.
It's terrifying, honestly, and the long-term impact on how we talk about politics.
Don't even get me started.
If we can't even agree on basic facts on what our democracy stands for,
Where does that leave us? It's a recipe for disaster.
it really is. It shows how fragile the truth is.
Especially now, with social media and everyone being so divided, it's almost too easy to manipulate.
So what do you think? Will this whole reinterpreting January 6th thing help or hurt Trump in 2024?
Oh man, if I had a crystal ball,
Right.
it's a huge risk. It could totally backfire on him.
Okay.
Especially if more stuff comes out about January 6th before the election.
Yeah, the legal stuff.
Exactly. But then again, it might be just what he needs to get his base to the polls.
Energize them.
Exactly. Honestly, it's too close to call.
It reminds us that we're not just watching this happen. We all have a part to play in this.
100%.
Yeah.
We got to stay informed, be part of the conversation, and hold our leaders accountable.
And never forget what happened on January 6th, whatever we call it.
Well said. We can't let ourselves become numb to this, to attacks on our democracy.
So, to everyone listening, we want to leave you with this. How do you interpret what Trump said? What does this mean for the future of American politics? This isn't just some political show. This is about the very heart of our nation.
Pay attention, get involved, and make your voice heard.
Because the future of our democracy might just depend on it.